I like how this just goes on forever.
Decimated in terms of numbers.
You get to be the beginner.
No set.
Sweet. Jared's supposed to be co-presenting with me today, so he's not here yet.
Who's supposed to be co-presenting?
Jared. But we'll see if he comes in late. Yeah, he's busy today.
I can't believe that all the other people on this field trip. What they are?
Yeah.
Oh, that's why they sent several people there. I was supposed to be there, but I'm not.
I was supposed to be there, but I decided to go into hazards and economic geology instead. So, yeah.
Well, welcome, Colin. We expect great things today. We hope Jared will show up eventually.
Yeah. If not, I'll just make up his part, okay?
So you're live?
I'm live. I'm always live. Okay. So my presentation is on Celtic influences in the Alps. And so for those of you who don't know me, in addition to being passionate about geology, I'm also passionate about Irish and Scottish music, as well as about history.
You know that this is Lord Calvin.
No, that's right, yeah. I own land in Scotland. I am a lord by law. So Lord Colin is what my students call me. So
Probably surfs on your.
probably, yeah. Yep. That's right. So yeah, Celtic influences in the Alps is the topic we're talking about today, and this mostly went into the history side of things, but I'll talk about culture as well. So Celtic influences in the Alps, is that what we're kind of talking about? You got your bagpiper here, and you got your pizza there, huh? Is that? Well, that's not quite what we mean by Celtic influences in the Alps. Although, yeah, that's pretty cool. But those are both good things too. But that's not what we're talking about. So, a little bit about Celtic history. I learned a lot studying this because, for me, the Celtic people is synonymous with Ireland and Scotland, as well as they had on the coasts of Brittany and Spain, but mostly when you think Celtic, you think Ireland, Scotland, right? Penny whistle and bagpipes, that's kind of the stuff you think of. Well, it turns out that the Celts were much more widespread than I thought they were. They started out, the first culture, or what they called Proto-Celtic history, and this is all rather nebulous, as when you're studying history and there's not a lot of written records, they just have to go off of archaeological evidence and cultural anecdotes, basically. But one of the main theories right now is that Celtic culture began, or Proto-Celtic culture is what they call it, began with what's called the Hallstatt culture. So where have we heard about Hallstatt before? Oh, wait, it's in Austria. There's salt there. Anyways, of Austria and Central Europe, about 800 to 450 BC. So this, just to give you some context, this is back when Rome, as a power, was really only Rome, the city, and nothing else. In fact, I don't know exactly when Rome was founded, but that might even been before Rome was founded. This is certainly before the Roman Empire existed, and so one of the dominant cultures in this area was this Celtic culture. And they started out, there's Hallstatt in Austria, and here's the Alps down here, and then going down into the Po Valley of northern Italy there. So they started out in this region on the Rhine and the Danube. And so that was the first major Celtic civilization here in Central Europe, not in the British Isles. So then, later on, the next Proto-Celtic culture was the, Bonnie's not here to correct my French, Latin. I'll say Latin. That's my attempt at speaking French, but I have no idea. I've never taken any French before. So the Latin culture, which spread throughout Europe, and basically it was only impeded by Roman expansion. Once Rome actually became a regional, or started becoming a regional and then superpower, that kind of checked the advance of this Latin people. But you can see they have, this map shows you their extent. They start out here and then spread all throughout to throughout all of France, or Gaul, it was known back then, the Gallic people, but down all the way through here, through Eastern Europe, through Bulgaria, through Greece, well, almost into Greece. They had little outposts as well here in Spain, as well as down here the Galatians in Anatolia and modern-day Turkey, as well as all the way up through the British Isles, almost all of the British Isles. So and then of course here, this is Tarentum, I think, in northern Italy. So they spread quite a bit throughout through most of Central Europe and the British Isles as well. They really only had a little bit of minor influence in the Mediterranean area, but certainly throughout the Alps.
Well, why did they spread? Because no one lived there, or because they just liked taking people over?
Yeah, it was mostly through conquest. Yeah, this is kind of, this is a lot of time when Europe was still very primitive, and so there's a lot of tribal alliances and then disalliances, breaking of alliances, the culture spread not necessarily only through conquest. The Celtic people, there's a difference between the Celtic language and then racial and ethnic Celts and then Celtic culture. Those can be parallel, but they're not necessarily parallel. And so their culture spread. It's not clear whether or not all these areas were actually ethnic Celtic people. But the civilizations that settled here certainly they spoke Celtic languages, where there's quite a few actually, and they had cultural artifacts that were Celtic influenced. Whether or not they're racially Celtic or not is not entirely clear for all these areas. But so there's some cultural diffusion as well as actual diffusion, ethnic diffusion through conquest in this time. And so that went, like I said, from about 450 BC, before Roman dominance at all, up until the 1st century BC when Rome became a political power. So, Celtic influences in Italy. So, first instance we have in Italy itself, Celtic culture, is the Lepontic language, which, nowadays when you think of Celtic, you think of like Irish Gaelic prominently, or maybe Welsh as well. But Lepontic was the first language that came out of this Proto-Celtic culture, and it was spoken in Italy as far back as the 6th century BC. And it was spoken throughout Switzerland as well as north central Italy, from the Alps all the way down to the Italian province of Umbria.
Did it have any English words that have been inherited from the century?
I don't know. That's a good question. I would think not, because this originated in Central Europe, and so they didn't have much contact by then with the British people and the Anglo-Saxon people. So, yeah. So then that spread initially. Those two Proto-Celtic cultures was kind of, or at least the first Proto-Celtic culture was kind of just through cultural diffusion and migration, stuff like that. When they got down into Italy, that's when conquest kind of first became a big thing for them. So in 391 BC, Celtic forces crossed over the Alps and conquered Po Valley. At this point in time, 391 BC, Po Valley, which is in northern Europe, was not part of the Roman Empire, or the Roman state, whatever it was back at that point in time. I don't know when entirely Rome went from being just the city-state of Rome to being the Roman Empire, but it was before that area was owned by Rome, and those were just some kind of podunk, for lack of a better word, Italian tribes there that didn't really have any strong political alliances, and these guys just came down and conquered them pretty handily. So Po Valley, where's that? Is that Po Valley? The great Valley of Peace that's protected by Po the Dragon Warrior? Yeah, I'd never even heard of the Po Valley until I started doing this. I've been to Italy before, so I did more research. So this is the Po Valley. It's drained by the Po River, which I've never heard of before. The Danube, yeah, sure. The Rhine, yeah, sure. Po River, does that even exist? Apparently it does, because it's on this map here. But it drains, it's the major drainage south of the Alps that drains this whole region, all of northern Italy. And then it goes down to, that's Venice, right around there, right?
Right in Venice, or just a little south?
It could be a little bit south. Oh, yeah, I think that's Venice, right? Because we can see the little lagoon. So just, yeah, so what's that? That's 150 kilometers. So, maybe 10, 20 kilometers south of Venice. So yeah, so they conquered these Celtic people. They conquered all of the this Po Valley right here, and basically just took all that over. And like I said, there wasn't really much in the way of established settlement. There's little tribes there, small towns, but nothing in the way of large cities that came to characterize the Roman Empire. So yeah, they conquered the Po Valley. And then Celtic conquests in Italy. So this continued. The Celtic people founded cities such as Milan in northern Italy. I had no idea Milan was founded by the Celts. Who would have thought? And we're going there. When I was in Italy last, we just drove past Milan, and I was like, oh, I'd like to see this. But I thought of Milan as being, one of the distinctive, Italian cities. But that's Celtic. Who would have thought at all? So the conflict between Rome and Rome kind of just let the Celts come over the Alps, stream of the Alps, and conquer the Po Valley. They didn't care. They didn't extend that far north by that point in time. But the Celts, as probably happened, as was typical probably of all, cultures, tribal cultures back at that time, there were tribal alliances within the Celts, and sometimes they would befriend the Romans and other northern Italian peoples, and sometimes they would antagonize them. But soon things began to kind of heat up, and so eventually the inhabitants of northern Italy appealed to Rome for help, and the Romans are like, okay, well, we have to stop the Celts. And actually, there's a whole story that goes behind this, that the city, what was the city called? I can't remember the city. Anyways, so there's the king of the city that instigated this whole battle. He had taken the wife of a nobleman who lived in this city. And so this nobleman was like, I want to get back at this guy for taking my wife. So he goes to the Celts and he says, hey, we've got gold here. We've got all sorts of other resources that you guys don't have. You should come and conquer my city. I'll help you. I'll aid you. I'll tell you the way. If you guys come and conquer the city, then you can take all of the resources that we have here in this city. And so the Celts formed an alliance, and they went and they attacked the city and took it over. And the people of that city were like, oh, Romans, come help us. Friends, countrymen, Romans, right? They said, come help us out here. The Celts are invading us. And so the Romans were like, sure, we're kind of friends with you. I guess we'll come and help you out. So the Romans went to stop the Celts, and they sent some ambassadors, and they said, okay, can we negotiate things? Can we see if we can, stop an end to this invasion and just, leave in terms of peace? Well, there was a fight. Apparently a brawl broke out, and one of the Italian ambassadors killed one of the Celtic chieftains. And that was kind of like a big no-no. They're like, whoa, ambassadors are supposed to be neutral. Ambassadors are not supposed to take part in the conflict. When ambassadors just killed us, that's it. You guys are going down. We're getting revenge on you Romans now. This city was first, now Rome is next. So the Celts, who's led by a chieftain named Brennus, marched on Rome. They got their whole army, this whole Celtic alliance. They marched towards Rome. And they said, we're heading on our way to Rome. And so the Romans were like, oh, okay. So they conscripted an army. They just frantically went and gathered an army, and they were surprised by how fast the Celts were marching south towards Rome from the northern reaches of Italy. So the Celts are marching south. The Romans bring up an army. They've got a couple legions. The accounts vary between 2 to 4 legions of Roman legionnaires, plus conscripted other citizens of Rome and allies from nearby villages and everything. They gathered together, and the Battle of Allia was fought. And the Romans just fell apart. They put their reserves on a hill and had their strongest forces on the front line. And the Celts were like, well, let's just go around them and attack the hill. So they attacked the hill. The Roman lines failed, and they just scattered before the Celts. And the Celts were like, really? That's all you got? The famous Romans? That was too easy. And so they just destroyed the Roman army. And this battle took place about only 15 miles north of Rome. So after that, the people of Rome just panicked. The Celts came in here and they sacked Rome. They walked in, and the consuls and some of the other high-class people of Rome, they decided just to meet them stoically. So they go and sit down on their ivory chairs outside their houses and basically just said, we're not going to resist, we've lost. So the Celts came in and they, massacred all of these, nobles and stuff in Rome, and then laid siege to, what was the hill called? they laid siege to the hill where all the Roman government buildings were.
The 7 hills were on.
Yes. And anyways, and it just turned bad. It was kind of like the siege of Stalingrad during World War II. Famine set in both sides. The surviving Roman citizens who were barricading, defending the hill, as well as the Celts. Famine and plague broke through, and they were about to finally negotiate a peace settlement. The Celts were finally like, look, we'll leave your city alone. After they ransacked most of the city and gotten their spoil of most of the city, they're like, we'll let you go, not try to conquer your seat of government right here. If you give us 1,000 pounds of gold, or I can't remember what their unit was, but 1,000 units of gold. And so so the story goes, they come in, and Chief Brennus had rigged his weights so that the Romans had to give him more gold. And the Romans like, that's not fair. And so Brennus just drops his sword on the scale and says, you know what? Victory for the conquerors, or will be to the conquerors. What he said, will be to the conquered. So basically, like, I don't care. We've conquered you. I'll say whatever I want. And so the Romans were just about to be like, well, should we give them even more gold than we bargained for? When another Roman figure by the name of Camillus comes in with an army, part of the army that had been routed earlier, and he comes back and he's like, I'm going to save Rome. And so he battles the Celts and he drives them out and saves Rome. And so because of that, he was known as the second founder of Rome, because he saved Rome from Celtic sacking and occupation. So that was the end of that particular battle, but not the war. You can see all these awesome Celtic warriors with their cool shields and stuff like that fighting the Roman legionnaires. So next, Celtic influence began to wane after the Third Samnite War. There's all these different wars I heard about. Like, we've all heard of the Punic Wars against Carthaginians and stuff, and how when they sacked Carthage, they didn't leave a single stone standing. But who has ever heard of the Samnite War? I'm pretty sure that Wikipedia just made that up. But what Wikipedia has to say about the Samnite Wars, is, in particular the third one, which took place in 298 to 290 BC, involved the Samnites, who they were an Italic people, they were not Celtic people, but they allied with a bunch of Celtic tribes to fight against Rome. And very interesting read. I didn't have time to go through all of it, but it looked pretty interesting. But if you want to learn more about that, that's really cool stories there. But anyways, the Celts were defeated in the Third Samnite War as Rome began to exert their influence and push further up into northern Italy. A very large Celtic army was destroyed by the Romans at the Battle of Telamon in 225 BC. And after that, Celtic influence just continued to wane until finally it said in 192 BC was when the Romans finally conquered the last Celtic settlements in Italy. And so now, the Roman Empire has expanded beyond just the city of Rome, but they've expanded throughout all of Italy now. And so, that's 192 BC, and then by the time of Christ, 200 years later, the Romans had conquered most of the Mediterranean and had become truly a superpower. Whereas in this point in time, they were kind of battling with the Celts to be the big kid on the block. And eventually the Celts lost, the Romans won, they became the big kid on the block, and then eventually became the superpower of the Mediterranean region. And you have this cool Gallic warrior there. That's one thing I didn't know, was that the Gauls were Celtic people. I thought the Gauls were completely different, but the Gauls were the Celts, or one of the various Celtic peoples. And so you hear about all this series of conflicts. And this didn't end the Celtic-Italian conflicts. It only ended the conflicts in Italy. But the Romans continued to push past the Alps up into Spain, up into Gaul, into Belgium, which is known as Lugdunensis at that time. And they, as the Romans continued their push northward, they battled fierce Celtic tribes the whole time. And then, of course, up into when they invaded the British Isles, they continued their battles with the Celts. And in the words of Jake, a lot of you guys probably know Jake Lee, he's like, who else? You've heard of Hadrian's Wall, right? The Romans came and conquered Britain up until they were stopped by the Celts. And they eventually, Emperor Hadrian declared that they should build a wall there to keep the Celts out, because they're like, we can't conquer any more of these people. They're too crazy. They're too powerful. Let's build a wall and keep them out. He's like, who else do you know what other people in the history of Rome caused Rome to build a wall to keep them out of their own territory. Like that's just how crazy these Celtic people were and how vicious they were. But anyway, so you see, I mean, this is Celtic and Roman conflicts lasted for several centuries, both as far back as what was the first one, 391 BC, all the way up through for several hundred years AD when they conquered the British Isles.
Is there much ethnic or racial distinction between the Celts and the Romans, or do they look pretty much alike, or at that point?
I don't know, to be honest. Well, yeah, I mean, because the Romans came from the Italic people and some of the Etruscans and the Latins and stuff. I think there was some ethnic difference between them. And I read some accounts, and they talked about when they'd fight the Celtic warriors, these Celtics were kind of more almost like the Aryan people, I guess. They talked about how they had long, flowing golden locks and stuff, which they would actually dye with lime water to bring out the gold color in their hair, and but it also made the hair like really frizzy and bushy and stuff like that. And so that was apparently very intimidating to the Roman soldiers fighting them. So I guess there were, because the Italians are dark-haired. So.
You have some thoughts on this, Jared? You're listed as a co-author on this presentation.
Oh yeah, his part's next. But yeah, do you have anything you want to say? Or?
Let's see, just I guess a lot of that. The origins were similar enough that to most of the outside cultures there wasn't really any difference, or at least right at the beginning there wasn't a difference between Romans and Gauls and everybody else, which makes sense. They were all very, very outside compared to how the other countries that had. But there was enough difference for them to tell each other apart, for sure. So.
Yeah.
Enough reason to hate each other. Oh
yeah.
One of those blonde-haired guys.
Right. And a lot of this could could meant to, well, there might have been more cultural differences than ethnic differences as well. So okay. So that's a lot of the Celtic history. And I just wanted to get into some Celtic cultural influences. So I didn't know this. So when I talked about when the Celtic people kind of peacefully assimilated into northern Italy before the warfare, broke out between them and the Romans eventually drove them out of Italy. But they first kind of peacefully coexisted with a lot of the peoples of northern Italy. The peoples of northern Italy had kind of an agrarian lifestyle. They raised sheep and other domesticated animals, and they grew legumes as well as grains. And then, their beverage of choice was wine, obviously, being in the Mediterranean. Whereas the Celts, they were a little bit more of a primitive society as far as their food goes. They had lots of wild swine and pork and wild boars. That was one of their big food sources. And they had a lot of beer. And in fact, one of my friends, now this is probably not even the Italian Celts, but my friend is like, God gave beer or gave whiskey to the Irish so they wouldn't take over the world. So, but I talked about that. But there's some cultural assimilation there as these two cultures came over and kind of like traded the things that they had. But so, how many of you guys here like pizza? Pepperoni pizza, good stuff, right? Well, apparently it was the Celts who introduced salted meat and salted pork to the Italians. We wouldn't have pizza today if it wasn't for the Celts. At least we'd have cheese pizza, but nothing else. We wouldn't have pepperoni, prosciutto, and the other salted meats and salted porks that the Italians are famous for today. So yeah.
We wouldn't have meat pizza, but we'd have
maybe cheese pizza. Yeah. Although, and then of course, this is an aside, but tomatoes are from the New World. So if it wasn't for New World influence, Columbus and those other people bringing back tomatoes, they wouldn't have tomatoes there either. So before the Celts and before the New World influences, they didn't even have spaghetti sauce, right? They didn't have tomatoes. They didn't have pepperoni. None of the stuff we think of. It is a lie, right? It is a lie. It's interesting. I didn't even know. And the nation of Italy didn't really even exist until about 150 years ago. Before then, it was just a whole collection of city-states after the fall of the Roman Empire. So everything I thought I knew about Italy was a lie, basically. Another Celtic influence is, of course, the bagpipes. But not the way you'd think. So the bagpipes had a long transition. They started out in Persia and other Middle Eastern areas, when the Romans went and they conquered these Middle Eastern areas, Palestine and other areas in the Middle East, they adopted the bagpipes as they had it and brought them throughout their culture. And then the Romans, as they went and conquered the British Isles, they brought the bagpipes with them. And the Irish and the Scottish adopted the bagpipes, actually, and then changed them and made them into their own. And you go to Ireland especially, or to England, there's a bunch of different kinds. There's the Irish Uilleann pipes, there's the Scottish Highland pipes, there's the Irish war pipes, there's the small pipes, the Northumbrian pipes, there's all sorts of different bagpipes. But we owe the Scottish bagpipes today to this kind of cross-culture influence between the Romans and the Celts. So
It goes back to Persia eventually.
Mhm.
Persia goes from
Exactly. Yeah, so it's interesting how three completely separate cultures and how that one aspect of that culture has diffused all throughout there. So yeah, that's the extent of my that's my part of the presentation. So that'll come afterwards. I'll put them together while Jared's talking. So Jared, you're up. There's the mic. Okay.
All right. Okay, so how does that work? Okay, so it's kind of funny digging for well, one thing I really enjoy is stories, and it was kind of funny. I was digging around for any stories or anything that would come from the Celtic time period, but it turns out that Rome was actually really pretty good at wiping out, or at least in the earlier days when they were conquering the first bit of the Celtics there, of basically eliminating most of those stories. So it's kind of interesting. Oh, one thing to add on to the Battle of Alea. One thing that I encountered was that last army that was going in apparently was having a lot of trouble until the holy geese of I think it was Hera or Zeus or something. Anyway, they gave out they honked together and gave the Romans courage to fight off the Celts. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, the Romans were trying to sneak up on them. They found out, or the Celts found out that they could climb up. There's a back pass up onto the hill. And like, hey, we can sneak up by night. And the guards and the dogs of the Romans forces failed to notice these Celtic soldiers climbing up the cliffside onto the hill, but the geese heard them and alerted everybody to their sneak attack.
Wow. I don't know. The story version was better. Anyway, but yeah. So, oh, I forgot now. Anyway, it's kind of interesting though. As I was looking at the different stories. I guess this is more from Switzerland. But the closest I could find for stories that kind of come from that area, I guess they're a little bit later too. But apparently the Celts are actually a little bit close with the Anglo-Saxons. The Anglo-Saxons had their stories about King Arthur, and the Celts had some stories about him too. But they mostly focused on their own hero, a fella by the name of Olwen. That was kind of interesting, I thought.
a little hazy on my history. What's the difference between Anglo-Saxons and Celts? I thought they were basically the same.
I think they're pretty similar. The Celts, well, he mentioned I guess the nationality or whatever. The group of people had their origins kind of from the Swiss Hallstatt area and kind of spread from there, and that turned into the Celtic Empire. And then kind of on the fringes of this Celtic Empire, there was a little group kind of in the northwest of the British Isles who weren't quite completely conquered by the Celts. I think they were closely related, but not quite. And that was the origin of the Anglo-Saxons. They started being able to kind of fight back there. So the Anglo-Saxons were not Celtic per se, or at least not like most of the Celtic Empire there. Might have had an earlier branch. But yeah, but it's kind of interesting that they do play some of the relation between the Anglo-Saxons and the Celts in the legends that they have, featuring Olwen and Arthur.
That's one of the reasons why the Irish and the Scottish hate the English so much, because the English are Anglo-Saxon and
descendants in the Irish and the Scottish are, Celtic. And there's been tons of intermingling, obviously, but they kind of, resent this other hand-dominant thing. So,
And
for centuries.
I think it's kind of interesting too that the reason.
I just say, having lived in England, a drunken Scotsman doesn't go through that mental process. when they don't like the English.
Yeah, they just say
They just always, if you're English, I'm going to punch you.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Something else that I thought was kind of interesting too was let's see, what was it? Oh yeah, so it's kind of interesting how we've got the Irish and Ireland and Scotland are kind of like the big Celtic areas that we think of today, but that's because they were on the fringes too. They were, I guess, on the fringes of the Celtic Empire, and it's because they were on kind of the fringes there that they were able to kind of escape the Roman domination, whereas it's kind of the rest of Europe there that actually had more of the Celtic influences originally before Rome got there. But yeah, I don't know. I guess that's for most part it. Yep.
Who is Owen?
No, he's so they've got stories about King Arthur, but Olwen was another character. He was a Celtic hero who I guess he was like a relative of King Arthur, so that's kind of why they portrayed sometimes they were rivals. More often he'd go to Arthur for a little bit of help if he needed anything extra on his quests. But he was kind of a completely, I don't know, separate, well, related but separate entity, and he was kind of their hero. But I think it was kind of actually pretty similar to how the English viewed King Arthur. Olwen was the hero of the Celts. So yeah, I thought that was nifty. Probably some of the stories again. But yeah, anyway.
Are you done?
I think so, yeah.
Any other questions? Are we ready for the bagpipe? Question is, are you guys ready?
Hey, do you want this?
No.
Oh.
Are you going to say a little bit how they were originally constructed?
Oh, yeah, sure.
You know what, kind of stand up in front where the camera is so that the
Oh, yeah.
alumni that are viewing can see, maybe.
Can you see me now? Okay. I need to turn real quick. So how these are constructed, I mean, nowadays we have the bag is plastic or synthetic, but back in the day they used a sheepskin as the bag. And then where each of, there's all these pipes and stuff like that, and that's like, where like the legs and stuff were, like the sheep and stuff. So how bagpipe works is,
So that was where the legs came out?
yeah, and like the throat and stuff, yeah. So already ready-made holes, right? So how it works is this is the blowpipe. Should I stand in front of the camera so you can see?
Yes.
Okay. This is the blowpipe, and this is where you blow air in. There's a valve here that keeps the air from coming back out. So you fill up the bag right here, or if you're from Wisconsin, you say the bay. So you fill the bag like that, and then you provide constant pressure on the bag. You don't pump it like a builder. You just have constant pressure on it, and that forces air out through these, which are the drones. And there's the kind of buzzing sound. There's the bass drone, and there's two tenor drones. They all play the same note, just octaves apart. And then so that's just the droning constant notes that you hear in the background. And then also, as you squeeze the bag, it forces air through this, which is called the chanter. And the chanter has another reed in there, and it has all the holes. And the holes, basically finger the holes, I mean, not too differently than you would finger, say, a penny whistle. Or, a recorder, whatever, it's a similar idea. There's little...
So does it actually have a reed in that
It
pipe?
does. There's a reed right here. That's the reed. And that's...
Do you get that one wet?
No, even the dry. So, I mean, in the Irish weather, just the wetness in the atmosphere is enough to get as wet as you need. Here in Utah, pipers often have problems because it's too dry here and their reeds have issues and stuff like that. And your reed will actually change how it plays depending on the weather. On a dry day, it'll not play very well. But if it's rainy the next day, then your pipes will play better. So, yeah. But yeah, you don't get it wet like on an oboe reed or a clarinet reed or anything. So.
How many octaves do the drums represent? 2 or 3?
2. Yeah, the 2 tenors are the same, so they're a little bit redundant. The Irish have a kind of pipes called war pipes, which are basically the same as these, but they just took out one drum. So the Scottish, they adopted the Irish war pipes, but they just added a drone to it to make it the Highland pipes instead of the Irish war pipes.
So how is this related to haggis?
Good
so you
question.
can play the bagpipes, and then when you're not playing them, you make haggis in the
That's right.
skins.
He's boiling in here. Yeah, you got this is the sheep's stomach, but haggis is made out of the cooked cow stomach, I think. So.
Good. Double duty.
So you can either eat it or make it into a bagpipe. I mean, that's the ultimate example of using every part of the animal, right? I mean, if it was me, I'd just throw away the stomach. But they're like, no, we're either going to eat it or make it into a bagpipe. So, yeah. What else do I want to talk about? So these were outlawed as a weapon of war by the English because the Scottish would go out and get drunk. They'd be like, let's rebel against the English. And then somebody would start playing patriotic Scottish songs on a bagpipe, and that would just like get them all riled up to war and go and fight the English. So the English made it a crime punishable by death to be found in possession of bagpipes. And this is in Scotland or Ireland. So in the Irish bagpipes, which I'm not going to talk about today, the Irish bagpipes, those are, the Irish invented them. They're much more mellow, and they invented them so that they could still have some kind of pipes to play, but not be accused by the English of trying to incite rebellion with big loud bagpipes. So, yeah.
So what are you going to play?
Good question. What do you want me to play?
Any requests?
The Brave. Scott and the Brave? Okay. I got to tune real quick. So part of tuning, I'm going to do, let's just say I'll tune good enough for playing in seminar today. Not good enough for if I was going to go do a performance. Typically, how do you prepare for a performance is you go and play your bagpipes for like 5 minutes without tuning at all. Because you have to acclimatize your reed to the air temperature. And so you have to get air flowing through it and acclimatize it to the air temperature, the ambient air temperature. And then once you've been playing it for about 5 minutes, then you tune all of the drones to your reed. And if you tune it before then it will just go out of tune as it acclimatizes. So, and tuning all your drones to your reeds is a process that takes a while as well. And then if you're playing in a group, oh gosh, that can take forever because you have to tune your chanter, which is the part that makes the melody. All the different pipers have to tune their chanter to each other, and then they have to tune their own drones to their own chanter. It's a freaking mess. That's why whenever we perform, we always show up to a performance an hour beforehand, like ready to go, dressed in your kilt and everything, an hour before the performance starts just to tune up. For me, I'll just tune up real quick for like 30 seconds, and then just make sure that it's bearable for you guys, and then I'll play a tune. Oh, I need torque. So tune the drums one at a time, and you just torque them off. So you just torque them off and then pull out the chords and you're ready to play. So if you want to put your fingers in your ears, I will not be offended, okay? Because last time I played in this room, people like jumped when I started playing. Sounds perfect, right? That's about as in tune as you can get. Decent bit of hold for a song, probably. So yeah, I won't worry about that one. That's just more things that can go out of tune as I play. So
what's the song titled?
Scotland the Brave.
Scotland the Brave.
Okay. John requested that. So, just a word to the wise. Scotland the Brave and Praise the Man, not the same thing. Okay? So, in Scotland the Brave, how it goes, commune with Jehovah. Bagpipes can't play that high. Bagpipes have a range of 1 octave, and that's it. And that goes above the octave range of bagpipes. And so you'll notice that there's no dun dun da da dun. It's dun dun da da dun dun dun. And so lots of times people are like, play Praise the Man. And it's like, I can't really, but I'll play Scotland the Brave, which is a tune which Praise the Man is adapted from. So.
Great job.
Too bad Dr. Britt's not here.
How long have you been playing?
Like 7 years. Yeah, I started when I graduated from high school. So.
Any other?
Yeah.
What's that?
Let's have an encore number.
Okay.
Encore.
I'll play, guys.
What's your favorite song to play?
I got a perfect one to play. Okay, I got a perfect one. Let me show you something. Okay, bring up the interwebs. Tyrol is in Austria, but it's an alpine city. Is there an index map that has like more of... Okay, so there's the Alps right there in Tyrol. During World War I or II, I don't remember which, there's some Scottish troops, were fighting for the British Army, and they had a bagpipe with him, and he was so struck by the beauty of the region called Tyrol that he wrote a song called The Green Hills of Tyrol. So, how does it go now? I'm blanking how it goes. Guys, this is bad. Every time we perform, our teacher would be like, all right, this is the song we're playing, get ready. And I'm like, wait, how's that go again? So, okay. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so you can play the start of it for me now. Oh, I remember how it goes. Sorry. Okay. There's 50 bagpipe songs I know, and they all start the same. When you only have 1 octave to work with, it kind of limits how much variety you can have. So, Green Hills of Tyrol. Guys might have noticed that after 3 seconds of playing before that my tenor drum cut out. There was only a bass drum going. And yeah, that's because I didn't take enough time to accommodate my pipes to the air. So I'll have to hold off on squeezing. I overblew it, so I'll have to hold off my squeezing a little bit and see if I don't apply too much pressure, if that will make it so the drums don't get overblown in both state. And the problem would not be as bad if I took out this. Maybe I'll just take this out. Then I'll have less of an opportunity.
That's a quick question.
Yeah.
Does it have a chromatic scale? Or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no chromatics. You just have to half hole it to do chromatic stuff.
Yeah, so like on harmonic.
Yeah. Okay, got all 3 drums going now, so it shouldn't overblow. Alright, this is Green Hills of Tyrol. The next song is After the Battle. Usually bagpipers will play tunes back to back, 2, 3, 4, even 5 tunes back to back, because they're pretty short. So this is Green Hills of Tyrol in the Alps, and then When the Battle's Over, which I don't know if it's the same guy who wrote that. Maybe he's the same guy who wrote that after they finished the battle in Tyrol. So
Well, Colin, way to go. Now, let's go fight. Let's go kill the Brits.
Right?
Is that John?
I'm not English.
Oh, darn.
Brian's not an English name.
Well, that was great, Colin.
So are most of your keys and majors in it?
Yeah.
Yeah. As a minor would require
Yeah, exactly.
chromatic. I'm not sure. So like the C to A.
Yeah. What they do is most of the keys or most of the tunes are in the key of A or D.
Yeah.
And then to do a minor one, they play it in the key of B. But that just means that because you start a note up, then you don't even have the whole octave to work with. You have less than a whole octave. So.
You have to put it down.
Well, very good. Well, Brittany's on for Thursday, and so we'll be excited to hear her presentation. And we're going to end at 4:45 on Thursday so that we can all get to our Quay Hebrew speaker. You all are conscripted to go to the Quay Hebrew lecture on
And there's a
Thursday night.
delicious dessert, so please go early before the time, because dessert's before the time. If you wait till after, it should be done and gone.
Is
Pretty darn,
there going to be dinner as well?
no dinner, but delicious.
Sounds good.
Dinner will be in April for the awards.
And you know who the guest of honor is, in addition to Adam Simon. Officially, on March 30th, Chris will have worked here for 30 years. Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
So that's amazing. What's that?
I was only 20 when I started.
That's right. She was only she was a kid.
He didn't know any better.
Okay, we'll see you on Thursday.
On Thursday, if you have not given me your
Thanks very much,
flight
Paul.
itinerary and it is different than the 10th through the 20th, will you bring it to class? Because I want to start doing the insurance, and I'm doing the insurance from the 10th to 20th. But if
You played for any church
you've
functions?
Yeah,
got
but
a
not
day
Saturday.
or
No,
before or
yeah, it's
after,
not allowed to Saturday.
usually
But
it'll fit into the
Thank you,
same
Richard.
time.
hey,
You know, you take somebody with a respectable Danish name like
You
Jensen,
know what? I'll send an email
and
with the
then
ones I
you
have.
impose that Scott stuff on top.
there's corruption there.
It's just
Did
not
you
right.
carry him all the way out there?
Oh yeah, I was in my
Were
office.
you happy?
You know that you can make bagpipes and trellis.
Yeah.
When it's not being used.
Yeah, just last week,
Yes.
My war with my dad from bishopric. They're doing the same thing parties. I played some Irish instruments, but then I played for FHE last week. I did let's get did St. Patrick's Day FHE. Thanks. And so I put my bagpipes for St. Patrick's Day FHE last week.
That's perfect.
I just gotta think of an occasion where we can have you all.
Yeah.
Are you taking Adam Simon on a field trip on Friday? Is that right?
I think he plays that.
Oh.
Got mixed up with Sarah.
Yeah, right?
Maybe I was talking about this.
Maybe we're going to take the tour of the department.
Okay. But he's leaving
Thanks.
Well, no, wait, no, he got his talk.
So,
Thursday night.
Sorry.
there's a guy
Playing
in
out
our
there.
Irish band who plays
Oh, okay.
the accordion. He's pretty good, actually.
I'll
So,
go with
maybe?
Right.
Yeah, it's hard.
Looking for me? Oh, it's
Yep.
I recorded it.
Thanks.